It's time to talk about the worst books I read in 2024. Honestly, I don't remember a lot of these. I really do try to just push them out of my mind after I get through a 2-star book or a 1-star book. This year, I gave out more 2 stars than I think I ever have before. 16 books got 2 stars for me out of the 159 that I read, and 3 books got 1 star. So we'll definitely go more in depth on those 1 stars because obviously I have passionate feelings about those 1 stars. But some of these 2 stars, honestly, I can't even remember. So I'm just gonna go through my Goodreads. I'm gonna start at the beginning. Whenever I get to the first 2-star, 1-star read, then we'll talk about it. The very first 2-star that I gave out was Kiss Me Mamore by Alana Quintana Albertson. This, I remember exactly why I didn't like this. I related to it in a lot of ways because the main character, don't remember her name at the moment, but the main character grew up in this very traditional religious family. And a lot of her upbringing was very similar to my upbringing. And because of that, I was able to see, and I don't think it's just me, I think anyone reading this book can see how naive she is to the ways of the world and men and things like that. She has never had a boyfriend before, and she is, oh my goodness, I think she was like late 20s at the start of this book. She meets someone and she ends up doing this like fake dating situation. Like, it's marketed as fake dating and they fake date for all of 2 seconds, really. So that kind of pissed me off. It was like, there were so many red flags when it came to this guy. And the fact that she's leaving one, frankly, abusive household and jumping into a relationship that is further controlling and abusive. And I don't understand why this was touted. Like, why was this supposed to be looked at as a good thing? Why was this supposed to be looked at as a good relationship? Do I look too deeply into romances sometimes? Yes, I do. Am I supposed to be just there for the vibes? Yes, but I couldn't with this one because it was so blaringly obvious that this woman needed to be alone and needed time to figure out her life and not jump into a relationship with the first man who came her way. And it was so toxic and there were so many red flags and I don't get why she didn't see them. So anyway, that's why I got 2 stars. I couldn't get on board with the relationship. That's what happened there. The next one is a book, and this is probably the most disappointing read of the year for me because this was one of my most anticipated reads of 2024. Hafsa Faizal wrote the Sands of Arawiya duology, beginning with We Hunt the Flame. Is that what it was called? Love that series so much. Loved Hafsa's writing. I don't know what happened in here. This is a Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faizal, and it's the first book in a duology, and it's marketed as this heist story, Six of Crows-esque meets vampires, right? All of that sounds great, and it started off so great. You can probably see do you see my annotations? Like, it started off so great. I was loving it. I loved the main character, Arthi, but this was so, first of all, predictable, but also, secondly, did not make any sense. When it comes to a heist story, there's a certain way that you expect it to be set up, right? There is a sort of formula to a heist, and I just feel like none of that happened in here. This was the worst plotted novel I've ever read. The whole heist situation, it turns out because of something that happens in here, something that we find out, the heist wasn't necessary at all. Like, there was no solid reason for the heist. There was no reason for anything. The motivations behind characters were ridiculous. We didn't have enough pages. Like, this needed at least another 150 pages. It was under 350 pages, especially considering the fact that, like, her first book was so long. She didn't have the time to develop this story the way she wanted to develop it. This read like an outline. It read like an outline of what she wanted the story to be, not the actual story. And that was so disappointing to me. Am I gonna read the second book when it comes out? Absolutely, because I want to know whether it gets better or not. But this was such a huge disappointment. It was 2 stars. I have to not talk about each book this in depth because we shall be here forever if that is the case. Next we have Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I gave this one 2 stars. I don't have much to say about this because I don't remember it. I do remember relating to the like financial situation that the main character was in, but I'm not a big chess person, and I feel like this was so chess heavy, and I just thought the relationship was boring. That's all. I thought it was boring. I thought our characters were boring. It felt very surface level. I just didn't like it. That's it. I have nothing else to say about that one. The next 2-star I gave out was Brier by Casey L. Bond. This was actually one of our Black Hat Book Coven picks for the year. I was promised a circus element. I didn't really get the circus element. I was also like, I didn't feel the chemistry. I didn't feel the romance. It was another one where like motivations were ridiculous, and it had a certain level of predictability that I just didn't enjoy as well. So that one I don't have a ton to say about. It was just bland and boring, and I just didn't feel the chemistry, and that's it. I don't have much else to say. The next 2 stars read, oh my god, this is another one that was really, really disappointing, you guys. This is A Crown of Ivy and Glass by Claire Legrand. I love Claire Legrand. The Empyrean trilogy, one of my favorites, right? Love every single one of her horror books. When I saw this come out, I was like, oh, I'm gonna love this. I'm gonna love it. I found a beautiful special edition of it, spent that money on a special edition of it, and then I read it, and it was so bad. So it starts off as this Regency era Bridgerton vibes romance fantasy, right? And I was really into it because the main character is someone who, it comes from a family of magic users, but she herself is not able to use magic. In fact, she's allergic to magic. She deals with anxiety and chronic pain, and those are 2 things that I have very much experience with and was excited to be able to relate to. But those were the only good things about this book, to be honest with you. It just went from bad to worse. Like, it started off as this nice little story, and then things just kept getting weirder and weirder until it turned into something completely different, which, listen, I'm not against, you know, I love getting switched around and having little plot twists and whatnot, but this was another one where it just made no sense, and it just kept getting more stupid. Do you know what I mean? It just kept getting stupid. There was this relationship that was so cringy because it started off as like, oh, this is sweet, oh, I like this dynamic, and then it turned into, oh, that's a huge problem. That's a huge red flag, honey. Like, are you okay? And then it just turned into, this is so fucked that like I can't even root for these 2 people anymore. Do you know what I mean? It was just so messed up. And then the situation and the plot just kept getting more ridiculous and more ridiculous. And I was so sad. I was so sad because I had this beautiful, stunning special edition, because it's Claire Legrand, whom I've always loved, who has never let me down, and this was just like one of the worst things that I've experienced. The only reason it got a 2-star instead of a 1-star was because of the anxiety rep, the panic attack rep, and the chronic pain was done really, really well, in my opinion, as someone who deals with all of those things as well. So that's the only reason I got 2 stars instead of 1, because otherwise it's a 1-star. Next we have Can't Spell Treason Without Tea by Rebecca Thorne. My biggest complaint about this was a 2-star for me, is the fact that it was advertised as cozy fantasy, and it's not cozy fantasy. The stakes are high. Yes, there are cozy things happening. We're following this couple as they're trying to open up a little coffee shop / bookstore. Those things are cozy. And those things were not the main focus of the story. I also felt like I was being preached to in this book, where it was like, here's what a good healthy relationship looks like, kids, and I just didn't appreciate that. as an adult reading an adult book, I don't need that. Do you know what I mean? So there was that. There was the fact that it was not as cozy as advertised several times throughout this book, where one or both of our main characters were at death's door. Okay, that's not cozy to me. Also, the fact that there was a pre-established relationship just made it not work very well either. It wasn't terrible, but it didn't really do much. My next 2-star read was Raiders of the Lost Heart by Jo Segura. This is another one, as in the case of Kiss Me Mamore, where the main character in here like the main male character had some really big red flags that I didn't understand why the main female character didn't see. He did a thing to her that I wouldn't have been able to forgive. And like, he had his reasons, but the fact that he did that, like, really just rubbed me the wrong way. It gave me the ick, and I could not get over it. I couldn't get over it. So this got 2 stars because, again, I feel like their relationship, while the sexual chemistry was definitely there, the way he treated her in every other aspect was gross to me. It was gross. And as a romance, it just wasn't gonna work for me. Then right after that, I read Sister, Maiden, Monster by Lucy A. Snyder. This started off really interesting because this is a apocalyptic sci-fi in which, I guess the best way to describe it without spoiling anything is that it's kind of exploring what happens when eldritch gods decide to remake humanity in their own image. Okay, I'll leave it at that. But this, not only was it weird, and I feel like I don't have enough experience with like that weird sci-fi subgenre to really say that this was what this was doing. I personally don't think it was doing shit, like fuck all, to be honest with you. I think it just wanted to be really gross and really weird, just to be really gross and really weird. The first part of this was so interesting because I felt like we were diving into deeper topics. I felt like the social commentary was really good, right? But then it just evolved from there. And there was one part of this where we were following, because we're following 3 different women. There was one woman that we were following in here that like got off murdering people, and just the way that was described was the most disgusting thing I've read in my life. Okay? There honestly isn't a reason why this isn't a 1 star. I don't know why I didn't give it a 1 star. I gave it 2 stars. I'm trusting my judgment in the moment because now I've had distance and like I can't remember a single good thing about it. But I mean, like I said, it did start off okay, and like the social commentary was commentarying, but I remember just like gagging reading this book. Honestly, I feel like it should be a 1 star at this point. But another one that started off so good and then just ended up being a huge disappointment was The Witches of Bas by J. Nicole Jones. This is a little thriller horror novella in which we're following a woman who accidentally joins a cult, but then she purposely joins a cult. And it started off in such a beautiful way, like it had this beautiful lyrical writing, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna love this. But then that kind of ended after a while, and it just didn't have a point. It had 0 point to it in the end, because we're just following this woman who accidentally joins a cult, realizes she's joined a cult, and then purposely joins a different cult. The end. Like, that's all that happened. It wasn't saying anything, it wasn't doing anything. That's all it was. So this got 2 stars, unfortunately. Next we have Servant Mage by Kate Elliott, which I gave 2 stars. We haven't gotten to any of the 1 stars yet. That's gonna be fun. Servant Mage, can't remember a single thing about it, and that's probably why it got 2 stars. It wasn't memorable, it wasn't exciting. I'm pretty sure that I was bored, that like, it's only, how many pages is it? It's only 164 pages, and I remember like wanting to DNF while I was at like 120 pages. I'm like, I don't even care anymore. I can't remember a single thing about it. It was just boring for me. We have Untamed Shore by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is the first time I have given this author 2 stars. I usually enjoy everything that I read by Silvia, but this one just didn't work for me. And I think it was the main character. I did not like her. I didn't like how naive she seemed to be. Well, I guess I can't say that because that's a spoiler. But it turns out that maybe she isn't. It just none of it worked for me, and it was just a matter of personal taste. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. I think Sylvia's writing was still stunning. I think her ability to create atmosphere is one of the strongest points in her favor when it comes to her writing, and that was definitely here with this book. But as far as everything, I can't even tell you what it was that made me not like it so much, but I think it was the ending. I think the way it ended just really pissed me off. But anyway, I can't remember. Oh, okay, there's my first 1 star. I'm gonna save it for the end because it's actually my worst book of the year. But I gave The Last Word by Taylor Adams 2 stars, and that's because it was just ridiculous. It felt like horror comedy. It felt like I was supposed to be laughing at all of this because it was so ridiculous and far-fetched. It felt like the author was also trying to be deep and profound, but like, it wasn't though. Do you know what I mean? So in The Last Word, if you don't know, it's following a reviewer who leaves a 1-star review on a horror book. And then the author contacts them and is like, why did you give my book 1 star? Like, take this down. And she's like, kindly no, like, my opinion is my opinion, right? And then starts to feel like maybe this author is stalking her. So that turns into a whole thing, but it just got so stupid. It got so stupid and ridiculous, and I was laughing out loud, but I don't think it was supposed to be. I don't think it was supposed to be. So yeah, that got 2 stars. It wasn't a 1 star because I actually enjoyed laughing at it, but I did give it 2 stars. I also gave Foundation 2 stars by Isaac Asimov, which I love the overall idea of, but the reading it was very tedious. The writing style of it was a little bit too much, and that's really all that it was. I didn't enjoy my time with it because of the writing. The world that Asimov created, brilliant, honestly. Love the show, and I will continue to enjoy the show, but the book was a bit much for me. Okay, I did give 2 stars to The Kingdom of Sweets by Erica Johansson. I read this, I buddy read it with Becky from Bex Reads, and we both really didn't enjoy it. I feel like the atmosphere in here was amazing, but the main character kind of isn't consistent, and I think that's the biggest problem that I had, was her inconsistency. Like, this is a very dark Nutcracker retelling, but I feel like the author didn't commit and the main character didn't commit either, and the way it ended, I just didn't get anything out of it, honestly. I also gave 2 stars to Only Santa's in the Building, which is part of the Amazon original Under the Mistletoe collection by Alexis Daria. I didn't like it. I just didn't like it, that's all. I'm not gonna say much about it. It's literally like 100 pages. So not much to say. We are gonna talk about now my 1-star reads. So the first one, and I feel like the less egregious of all of them, is Pumpkin Spice and Everything Nice by Katie Cicatelli something. I gave this book 1 star because it's supposed to be a YA romance centered around the fall season. Really what it was this overachiever teenage girl doing way too much and finally realizing that I'm doing way too fucking much. Her mother should have put a stop to it. I feel how ridiculous she was with this boy who's supposed to be the love interest, which it didn't even feel like there was anything there. It didn't feel like a romance. It just felt like they were good friends. Well, they were enemies to friends, but only she knows why they were enemies, because he was fucking clueless because she was insane. And it was just ridiculous. I thought I was getting a really cute, sweet YA romance when I was really getting a way uptight teenager being enabled to be even more uptight. Does that make sense? My next 1-star read was Pumpkin Everything. The pumpkin titles didn't work out for me this year. But Pumpkin Everything by Beth Labonte was a novella that was a second chance romance between 2 people who were together in high school, okay? 10 years later, after high school, she comes back to town. They don't spend any time together. but decide that they're now madly in love with each other again based on the relationship that they had in high school, which is so ridiculous to me. Also, it was corny as fuck. Also, it takes place in this cute little small town that's very much, I forget what the town is called. Autumnboro, is that it? That was the only thing that I liked. But we didn't even get much of that. It's really just our main character being in her own head and like thinking way too much of herself. She's a self-published author who made it big off of some horror books that she based on her hometown. And then she goes back to that hometown 10 years later and everyone like reads the books and are mad at her because the way she painted everyone in the books. So that whole thing was really stupid as well. And like, there was no romance here. There was no romance here. Just at the end of the book, they're declaring their love for each other when like, are you stupid? Based on what? And then she is like probably one of the most selfish people I've ever had the displeasure of reading about, because he wanted to do something to literally keep his dead mother's legacy alive, and she thought it was the worst thing in the world that was happening to her. And I'm like, bitch, this isn't even about you. So it was horrible. It was horrible. Do not read it. But the worst book of the year is by far Daughter of the Blood by Anne Bishop. And I know a lot of people love this series and I don't know why. I don't understand the love for this series. I really don't. I'm sorry. I was so grossed out reading this book. I don't know why I kept reading it. I should have DNF'd. I should have DNF'd, but I did not. Because it was a book club book and I wanted to be able to discuss it, even though no one else finished the book. But in Daughter of the Blood, we're following, like, how do I even describe this book? Right? It's about the witch and a prophecy and this little girl being the prophesized witch, right? And all of the forces that then want to control her. Keep in mind that she's at most 12 years old by the end of this book. I don't think she gets older than 12 in this book. And the sexual attraction that forms between other people to this 12-year-old girl is gross. It is disgusting, and I don't understand why people thought that that was okay. I'm like, that is the biggest thing. That is the biggest thing. It's the ick of this being a romantasy, of this being fantasy romance, when our main female character is 12 years old. Are you okay? Like, are you okay? I am so sorry if you loved this book, but it's not it. It's not it. And like, I wish I could see past that and see what other people are seeing. And obviously she's gonna grow up, and there was a whole rape scene as well in here. This was horrible. It was horrible. It is the worst book of the year. It is probably the worst book that I have ever read in my life, and I, because of that, will never pick up anything else by this author. I'm so confused. I'm so confused as to why so many people absolutely love this series when it's so bad. Is all I have to say on that, to be honest with you. I don't want to go on anymore. I could share like direct quotes with you. No, actually I can't, because I'm pretty sure I got rid of it off of my Kindle. I didn't want it anywhere in my space, in my vibe. But that is it, you guys. I'm sure you all knew that Daughter of the Blood was going to be the worst book of the year. I don't even know if I talked about every single 2-star book that I had, but I didn't want to be here for another 20 minutes. So I'm going to end it here. Talk to me down in the comments. I would love to know what your worst book of the year was. For an emoji, if you don't have anything to say, I don't know what emoji we should leave. Just leave me the salt shaker emoji, because I feel like I was a bit salty. A bit. In this video. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe if you have not done so already. I will see you in my next video. Bye.